She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
Hi, I'm Dani Johnson. Welcome to the Dani Johnson Show. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, is your spouse doing something you don't agree with? Listen, on the grand scope of success, on the big playing field that you decided that you wanted to play to win this year, to win in marriage, to win in your finances, to win as a parent, to win in your health. Oh, gosh. Maybe you've had a few failures there. I'm sorry. As that just flew out of my mouth, I am like severely convicted right now. With, I don't know if you were with us this entire year, but we haven't missed a single show. There has not been a single rerun this year. Every single show has been fresh new content. I broke my ankle, still ended up, dirt biking, and still ended up, producing this show with my team, of course, and giving you fresh new content every day. And in the midst of that, I definitely used my ankle as an excuse to put a bit of weight on. That's the reality. I didn't have to eat everything I was eating. Anyway, so, you win some, you lose some, but we're talking about family today. There you go. That's a nice confession for you. But yes, maybe you made the decision to play to win in every area of your life. And maybe you've had a few losses like I have had this year, and maybe you've had some great wins. But if you plan on playing to win in marriage, and you want to succeed greatly in marriage, right? Because success, the definition of success cannot just be about money. It can't just be about your business. It can't just be about your career or cars or stuff and clothes and brand names and traveling. There's got to be a full picture of it. And one component of your success is your relationship with your spouse. And the bottom line is, there are going to be things you don't agree with. Yes, it's a fact. There's going to be things you do not agree with. How do you handle it? Now, has your spouse ever done something that you were like, absolutely against? I can tell you I have had many. Hans and I have been together 27 and a half years, legally married, according to the state of Hawaii. 25. And we are two very passionate people who we are opposites in every way of the word opposite, like complete opposites. And yet, of course, come on, we were 18 and 22 when we first got together. So at 18 and 22, we're not even here. I thought I was like so grown up and, I'm already a woman. I'd already had a child. I had already been married before. I'd already had 3 businesses, 1 business failure. I was already successful. You know what I'm saying? I had already, figured life out all at the age of 22. So I thought. And he was just a kid. He was 18. What did he know? Not only that, but he was shorter than I was. And he grew up in Hawaii. I grew up in California, as though that was so much better. Anyway, bottom line is that we have a tendency of, in these disagreements, we try to change each other, thinking that it's actually going to work. Even though in most cases, opposites actually attract, not to mention male, female, hello, completely think differently, have different motives, different thoughts, different opinions. But for some reason, some couples like Hans and I did, lack the maturity to understand one another and to understand the person's perspective and even to value the perspective, and yet don't necessarily have to agree with it, but maybe we can understand it and see things from that different point of view. I got to read this to you. Dr. John Gottman, a researcher on dynamic of marriage, estimates that 70% of marital conflicts are perpetual. Blah, blah, blah. Isn't that terrible to think about? Think about that. It's perpetual. Meaning couples keep having the same arguments over and over instead of working to see the other person's perspective. Are you in that situation where you just right? It's the same old argument about the same old thing over and over and over and over again. I can think of many of those in our, first 20 years of marriage. Yeah, the last 5 years have been blissful. They've been amazing. In fact, we have not had a single moment of contention in coming up on 3 years. Next month is 3 years, not a single moment of contention, not a single argument that elevated, escalated into a full-blown fight where it was like striving and contentious with each other. Has there been conflict over the last 3 years? Of course there's been conflict. I mean, hello, we've gone through all kinds of weird things, whether it's been health challenges or big business decisions and life changes and kids getting married and married again and babies born. Do you understand? A gigantic move, a house being built. You know, my husband built his dream house this past 2 years. Do you understand? So there's been lots of points of conflict, like places where, wow, there's a difference of an opinion that come together. But we finally have the maturity in ourselves as well as love and true honor to honor each other in our feelings and to express those feelings in honor instead of expressing it in accusation. You always say, and you never do, and how come I always, right? That's how we both used to talk to each other, with accusations. And so we want to talk about this today. Is there a point, and is there something, I want you to write it in here below. Have you come to a place with your spouse where there's just some things you just don't agree on? And what is your plan? What is your strategy when that happens? Mine and Hans's, we had no strategy for years. We didn't. It would just turn into a war. It just was a war. I don't want to say a fight, because a fight is nothing. It turned into a war, like full-blown war. Isn't that crazy? Like crazy, terrible, horrible, immature in all reality, just a full-blown war. Now, we've got Amy Bain who writes this. She says, yes, he signed up for a credit card while we were in college, and he was so pleased with himself. And you know what? You can't blame him for being pleased with himself. Think about it. Our entire culture is selling credit cards. Our whole culture is celebrating credit cards. It's like you've reached this like super status once you get a credit card, not realizing that you've become a slave, not realizing that that's not what 2% of the population is striving for. They are the lenders. 98% of the population is the borrower, and the borrower is enslaved to the lender. And so when the whole culture celebrates something that is awful, you don't know that it's awful. Of course he was really pleased with himself when he got his first credit card in college. So again, if you try to see it from his perspective, this was an innocent thing. He was duped into it. He thought it was a good idea, but here's what she said. She goes, I flipped out. It took us 20 years to finally get free of the plastic. I have always had a distaste for debt. My dad avoided it as much as he could too. We have only our mortgage left, and then we'll be totally debt free. And so look, so that could be a fight between Amy and her husband for 20 solid years, right? It could cause resentment. It could cause bitterness. But instead of that, and again, I'm telling you from personal experience, right? Because we did not do it right. We really didn't. Hans and I had lots of not conflict, but contention. We had actually completely different views financially. The only thing that I could say that we agreed majority, like 99% of the time on, somehow, some way, I don't know how this was the case, is about raising kids. We somehow had the very same intuition about how we were going to raise the children and what we were going to teach them and how we were going to lead them. And I think it's because we both grew up in massively dysfunctional homes. We both grew up in abuse. We both grew up with drug-infested homes, and we both were molested. So because we both had very similar pain from our past, I don't know if that is what caused this. Like that was the place, like the children, the kids, that was the place where it's like we 99.9999% of the time agreed on everything. I don't know how that happened, other than it being like the grace of Almighty God is pretty much what it is. It was kind of in some of the later teen years where it was like, oh, there was a few things that were like, kind of holding my breath and just praying because, that things got a little crazy for a little season, and that was really a hard season. About 6-7 years ago. So anyway, bottom line is this, is we have a tendency of trying to persuade and convince the other person. And when we don't win, and we see that as a loss, when we don't win, we get bitter, we get resentful, we get mad. And now we're like building this list of things that we're mad about, building this list of, like, for example, it could be the credit card thing, which I'm sure Amy didn't, but it could be like this thing of like, you always, why do you know what I mean? We start attacking with our mouth, we start accusing with our hearts, and now we've created a place of judgment. We've created a win-loss situation versus a win-win, a glorious win-win situation, which in the case with her, I don't know if she did this or not. I was like, honey, I totally understand. Yeah, man, our whole culture's all been about that. And yeah, okay, but how do you feel about that thing now? And let's see, there's still a difference in the opinion. The key is that if you want a harmonious, beautiful, passionate, intimate relationship with your spouse, which is what you started off with, by the way. You started off with that intimacy of conversation, the safety of being able to share your perspective without being attacked, the safety of being able to share how you feel without being judged, right? That's what you used to do before you got married. Why all of a sudden you got married, you want to change somebody. I have to read this to you because this is really powerful, and this is written by a coworker of mine. She says, I talked to a very sweet client recently who is going through a hard time. She wants her husband to step up and lead their family, but feels that everything falls to her. She continued to explain to me where he falls short and why she has to take charge. I told her that I can struggle with that too, but it's wrong. We say we want our husbands to lead, but we really just want our husbands to be puppets. Wow. We want them to lead how we think they should lead and act how we think they should act instead of encouraging them and trusting that they are who God chose for us and for our family. And He is the one who will change him and make him into the leader God wants him to be. I'm going to take that one step further. And He will change you as the wife who's wanting to control, manipulate, and lead our man. That He also will have to change us. I have to tell you a story. Early on in our marriage, this is like a year into it, I remember being on the floor and crying my eyes out to God. I was the main breadwinner at the time. Hans was trying so hard. He was working like crazy and working a business and not making squat and was not contributing. My businesses at the time were flourishing and doing fine, but his was not. And it came to a point that after I got married, all of a sudden I wanted him to provide and to protect for me and for our daughter, Erica. And so here I changed once we exchanged vows. And so here I was complaining to God on the floor, bawling my eyes out and saying, you need to change him. He doesn't lock the doors. He doesn't even buy diapers. I was just totally complaining the same way I complained at my husband, the mean, nasty notes that I would write my husband, the belittling things I would say. You're the man. You're supposed to do this. You're the man. You're supposed to do that. Bottom line is I was being the man because I was doing all of that stuff. And I was afraid things would fall apart instead of letting them fall apart so that he could step up and take charge. The fact was I was so controlling and manipulative over everything, and I had a certain standard of how I wanted things to be done, that I was the one that actually needed to change. And so in this time of prayer, I didn't know this at the time, but here's exactly what I heard in my spirit. I said, God, you have to change him. And I heard these words loud and clear, almost like an audible voice say, we will start with you. I'm like, me? I pray for 2 hours every day. I read my Bible every day. I'm serving you every day. He doesn't even do that. We will change you first. Friend, I have to tell you, Father knows best. I was the one creating an environment for a man to die in. I created an environment for the man that I married to die in. I created an environment for him to hate himself, for him not to believe in himself, for him to struggle in. I created an environment of conditional love. I created an environment of conditional acceptance. I created an environment of emasculation. You see, the wife creates the environment. She's the garden. He's the one planting the seed. Your husband is the seed planter. And here I refused to let Hans lead. Why? Fear. Where was my fear from? It has nothing to do with Hans. Fear is sin against my Father, my true provider, my true perfecter, my true leader. I was afraid and did not trust my real Father in heaven. But instead, I had all my trust and all my faith in my ability to build businesses and my ability to run a home. And I compared who I was to my husband, or at least who I thought I was. I created an environment of discouragement. I created an environment of dissatisfaction. I told my husband constantly how dissatisfied I was with him. I created an environment of death. I recently heard an analogy that I must share with you. It is an analogy where the Garden of Eden, right? So here we have Adam, who was created for the garden. He was created specifically for the garden. And so I was in a room, and the question got asked, and this was at actually Hot Marriage Secrets, which is our top-level training seminar, 3 days. It was in Maui, and it was all about marriage, and it's called Hot Marriage Secrets. And one of the speakers, one of the trainers there, asked the question, okay, so do you know what your Garden of Eden is? Men, Adams in the room. Do you know what your Garden of Eden is? And all of them said, my job, my business. And he says, no, your Garden of Eden is your home, because the work was created after he got casted out of the Garden of Eden. So your workplace is outside of your home. So your Garden of Eden is your home. And he said, either the ground is fertile or it's infertile. And the one who determines that is the wives. The wives are the one that create the environment that's either fertile or infertile. And see, the environment I created for my young, very young husband, who was giving it his best shot. He was giving it his best, but I couldn't see it. I was so blinded by fear that I accused him because of my fear. I attacked his manhood. I attacked his character because of my fears, not because of him, but because of my stuff. I attacked him of not being a protector because I had been wounded as a child and badly abused, and everything, all of my pain from my childhood caused by my stepfather, I attacked Hans with. So the environment that I was creating was infertile ground. It was toxic ground. And that's why in that prayer, my God said, no, let's start changing you first. I am so grateful that Father does know best and that he began changing me first. So whatever disagreement you and your spouse have, if you're one of those couples that 70% of your arguments are perpetual, you're having the same one, I want you to ask your Father in heaven to give you insight on what has to change in you so that this can stop. There's harmony on the other side. There's peace on the other side. There's beauty and passion and blessing on the other side. If you are willing to ask the question of your Father, Father, what needs to change in me so that I can create a better environment for the both of us to be able to grow in? And Father, please forgive me for trying to change what you created, trying to change the man or the woman that you created, whether you're the husband or the wife, that you created. You love what you created. Teach me to love what you created. And ask him to search your heart to find out why you're being provoked, why you're continuously going round and round and round, why you are allowing your responses to be what they could be or what they are. Hey, listen, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Dani Johnson. This is the Dani Johnson Show. Come on, talk to me. I want to hear your comments below. I know there's always circumstances, whether it's adultery and things of that are maybe going on inside the relationship that you definitely don't agree with. Write it in the comments below. We want to know if today helped you. We want to know what some of those struggles might be. We want to see where maybe we might be able to point you in the right direction, maybe to help. I hope to see you live at some point at a live event. First Steps to Success. That's the first steps to your hot marriage if you're wanting your marriage to be something that is absolutely phenomenal. Other than that, thanks so much for joining us. God bless you and have a great one. Bye.